Bound up in matter is the essence of man, his true nature obscured and obstructed, not by the unseen hands of conspirators, but by the blatant tyranny of matter, suppressing his true state of being. Lost in a hopeless circle of the senses, for in his constant state of becoming, his whole existence is a condition that he perpetually seeks to escape. But his every effort to pull himself out only hastens his downward slide. We often think of our physical world as being the true reality, that the experiences we have while we exist in our bodies are real, and it is hard for us to conceive of anything beyond that. When we do try to think of any kind of metaphysical realm, it is often the product of an intellectual rumination, not something we have grasped experientially, and as a result, it too is only as real as the rest of our physical world, which is to say, not real at all. The true metaphysical world cannot be accessed through cognitive processes. There is a gap between these worlds that must be overcome if we are to continue our journey into the world of tradition. But first, we must understand the nature of these two worlds, as well as the difference between the nature of the physical man and the metaphysical man. Evola begins chapter 1 by saying that, in order to understand both the spirit of tradition and its antithesis, modern civilization, it is necessary to begin with the fundamental doctrine of the two natures. According to this doctrine, there is a physical order of things and a metaphysical one. There is a mortal nature and an immortal one. There is the superior realm of being and the inferior realm of becoming. The concepts of being and becoming will probably be familiar to anyone with a background in philosophy, as they are foundational concepts in ontology, but are unlikely to have been encountered outside of that context. The idea of there being both a physical world and a metaphysical world are integral to a traditionalist philosophy, as everything traditional man does in the physical world corresponds to or orients towards something in the metaphysical world. In the physical world, where we have this law of linear time, we always exist at the intersection of the past and the future. Everything in the physical world is impermanent due to the passage of time. We are all born, grow old, and die, and the physical matter of our bodies is recycled into new forms of matter again and again. This is the state of becoming. It is a state characterized by constant change, insufficiency, and impermanence. Evola uses the term progress to describe becoming, as progress is oriented towards a destination that you can never reach. We spend our whole lives trying to improve ourselves and our lot in life in some way or another, but in the end, we can't take any of it with us. Being, on the other hand, is the final, ultimate end point. Being exists in the metaphysical world only. This is the state in which pure potential is fully realized, where the true self exists, where everything is perfect and eternal, the home of the natural cosmic order, called Dharma, Logos, the Tao, Mat, and many other names. Because there is no linear time, there is no requirement for these pure forms to change. They just simply are. As Parmenides said, what is, is. In this chapter, Evola hints at what is to come later in the book. He says that asceticism, in the form of either contemplation or heroic action, is traditionally regarded as the path that leads to the world of being, and that initiation is the bridge between the two worlds. This is a theme that will repeat throughout the book, but for now we will only discuss why asceticism must be the path to the transcendent. We are, after all, modern people, and modern people like to know the why behind everything we do before we do it. Ascetic practices help us break free of our attachments to the material world. Evola references, for example, the Buddhist idea of samsara, the current that dominates and carries away every form of the inferior world, which is a concept of the physical world as being one of blind yearning and as an irrational identification with impermanent aggregates. What this means is that our physical world is one in which we will always be wanting more, and one in which we attach our ego self to materialistic identifiers that will not survive our physical deaths. All of these things are distractions from the transcendent. If we want to escape the samsaric current, we must break free of these yearnings and attachments, and an ascetic path helps us to do that. This is why the world of tradition is always oriented towards that which is more than life and seeks liberation from the human condition. Evola also writes, "In different ways the man of tradition found in the experience of covetous identification, which obscures and impairs being, the secret cause of his existential predicament. These material attachments, this state of becoming in which we are always wanting more and are never truly satisfied, is what causes existential angst in people, what ultimately causes suffering and nihilism. In Christian theology, we see this expressed in the idea that covetousness or greed is the root of sin. Sin is a state of existence removed from God, which is ultimately what a state of becoming is. Thus, to overcome sin is to overcome becoming, and to reach upwards towards transcendent being." He writes at the beginning of the chapter about materialistic spiritual beliefs. Certainly, there are those who believe in something beyond the realm of phenomena. When these people admit the existence of something else, however, they are always led to this conclusion by a scientific hypothesis or law, or by a speculative idea, or by a religious dogma. They cannot escape such an intellectual limitation. Through his practical and immediate experiences, modern man, no matter how deep his materialistic or spiritual beliefs may be, develops an understanding of reality only in relation to the world of physical bodies and always under the influence of his direct and immediate experiences. This is the real materialism for which our contemporaries should be reproached. All other versions of materialism that are formulated in scientific or in philosophical terms are only a secondary phenomena. The worst type of materialism, therefore, is not a matter of opinion or of a theory, but consists in the fact that man's experience no longer extends to non-physical realities. This is where we really see how deeply the problem of materialism comes into play, how it cuts us off from the divine metaphysical world. Materialism has permeated the modern world so completely that even all of the tools and methodologies modern man uses to approach the transcendent are all bound up in this materialism. Logic, rationality, and profane sciences, that is, the sciences of manipulation of matter, as opposed to the sacred sciences, which deal with unlocking supernatural energies. Take, for example, something like the Hadron Collider, an exceptionally big and powerful piece of machinery that manipulates matter at the atomic level and produces astonishing amounts of energy, but still cannot help man find transcendence. Ironically, a statue of the dancing Lord Shiva graces the entrance, a revealing choice since the only endgame of their profane science is cataclysmic destruction on the material plane. Modern man has attached a pseudo-religion to profane science. While many worship at the altar of science as the supreme authority, its gods have become the men in lab coats, the ersatz creators. Man now fancies himself as divine by virtue of his ability to create with science, and soon we will be able to create sentient but soulless life in AI technology. This is part of the hubris of the age. It's the spirituality that a NASA physicist would have when he goes down into the quantum world where the laws of our physical world seem warped and often inapplicable, and he is in awe of the flux he witnesses. He has now reached the point of wonder. He cannot explain it through rational thought any longer, and now he thinks, there must be a God because I have run out of rational explanations. But even this he can only perceive through materiality and empirical observation, and approaching God in this manner is not the same as the experiential knowledge of God that traditional man had. It is instead a passive way of knowing God, one that still keeps the person disconnected from the metaphysical, as they must still rely on their cognitive processes to understand it. This is the trap that many religious people fall into when trying to defend their faith against atheism. The atheist always demands material proof, which is no surprise when the god of most atheists is the aforementioned profane science. The modern religious person, whether the modern Christian or some other progressive faith, themselves steeped in materiality, fumbles for an answer, trying to point to this or that in nature as evidence for their belief, when all truly spiritual people of any faith know perfectly well that they did not base their beliefs on materialistic evidence or logical arguments, but on a feeling deep within them that cannot be explained in immanent terms, something not reducible to discursive thought. The atheist, of course, then leaves the exchange feeling smug and self-righteous that their scientific God has won yet again. But can you imagine a Buddhist monk having such an exchange? No. He would simply laugh or smile and return to his meditation, to his experiential seeking and knowing of transcendence. To the unbeliever, he would merely state, I cannot explain the transcendent to you. You must set out on the road and see for yourself. While there are not many modern examples of someone devoted to an ascetic spiritual path who has cultivated that traditional bridge between worlds, we can still see this in the disciplined monks of the East. The experiential knowledge of the transcendent often requires doing in order to know, rather than knowing in order to do. In the age of materiality, we always want to know everything about something before we decide to do it. But the transcendent cannot be reached in this way. Instead, we must first do all the right steps laid out on an ascetic path. And in the end, after we have walked the path, only then do we truly know. Perhaps some would call this faith, but faith born of experience is something more than faith. It is knowledge. In order to fully comprehend the nature of what the ascetic path sets out to achieve, we must understand the nature of duality. Much like linear time, dualism is something that is necessary in the physical realm, but does not necessarily exist in the metaphysical realm. This is the space aspect of space and time, the two unique components that define our physical realm and cause our world to be an imperfect reflection of the metaphysical. In the material world, everything is a separate, distinct entity with clear boundaries between what it is and what it is not. For example, we humans are separated as individual beings by our physical bodies. There is a clear delineation between what is my body and what is your body, and all the things that are not human bodies at all. Even identical twins who are standing right next to each other are still separated by space, each living out a unique experience of life. But on the metaphysical level, such distinctions do not necessarily exist. On one level, we may have, for example, a pair of lovers who, while existing as separate bodies in the physical, share such a close spiritual connection that on the metaphysical plane they are intertwined as one. On another level, we can think of all things being connected in this way, each material person and thing as being individual drops of the same vast metaphysical ocean. And in fact, this revelation of interconnectedness is what often comes to those on a path of contemplation. I say revelation because it tends to occur as if it were a recovered memory of one's true nature from the time before they were manifested physically, a rediscovery of their divine origins. And this is why the ascetic path leads one to the transcendent, as it strips away all notions of I am my body, I am my thoughts, I am my feelings, I am my experiences. One is then left with only I am, their true, eternal, unchanging self. This is why, in deep meditation, one might experience a sense of calmness and peace, being in touch with their unchanging divine, because this is ultimately our true nature, our being. Even when we have only glimpsed it briefly, that knowledge is forever burned into the psyche, the awareness that there is something more beyond the world of becoming. And gradually, steadily, focused on the goal, we recreate the path, making an art of life, revisiting the divine. We commune with being, with the ultimate goal of unity with this perfected state. Evolus's method of revolt, his antidote to modernity, is, without question, ascesis. He considers it imperative to regain the traditional connection with the transcendent, and sees this as the only sure way to relight the torch of man. Modern man is lost amidst the flood of his own becoming. We can let the undertow pull us down, or we can become the force of our own liberation. Already we have reached the point in time where the chaos and degeneracy of the modern world has moved beyond needing to be critiqued. There is nothing worth pushing back against. It is all self-evident now. The only task left for those with vision is to go away from the world, if not physically, then at least internally, and to renovate and rebuild the new man.
Away from the world, go away from the world, let it have its own way, let it fall upon days ringed in fire and anguish, just let it be. To stand in the way is to be lit ablaze with the fires that the modern man carries to the field, where he meets those who hold on to values revealed. As the world of tradition, they don't need your permission to believe what their fathers and mothers believe. Away from the world, go away from the world, let it have its own way, let it fall upon days, scenes of fire and misery. Just stand aside, the engine has ceased, the machine shall soon die, a death so befitting a world caught in pain, where the puppets watch puppets in a theater insane. No intervention will save us from this, it must run its course and reveal the abyss. Away from the world, go away from the world, let them choose to be slaves, they're born to be slaves. Freedom can't be forced on a people if they can live in the dark and believe it is day. The only path have left for the sovereign soul is to go to the mountains and forests alone. Flow with the energy, maintain integrity, be what your fathers and mothers decree. Great, beautiful forest, let me breathe you in my soul. Let me climb you to the heavens. Help me forget the world below. And then it all fell before me. Like the smoke was blown away. The grail that I had been out seeking had been inside me